we are going to be talking about a topic that's very, very near and dear to my heart. It's been a very big part of my life and definitely very integral to the last 4 to 5 years. But this is a topic that is universal. So it really touches everybody in this room because at one point in our lives, we were all students. And even today, you might have brothers, sisters, sons or daughters that are learning in some shape or form. So education is going to be the topic of the next 2 sessions. My one is going to be a keynote, and then Ayman is going to do a panel on education. And specifically, what we're going to be talking about today is education technology. But before I get into it, and before I talk about the details, I wanted to give a bit of context as to how I ended up here. So why am I here? And before a startup founder, I also had a life. So I'm going to quickly touch on. So as recent as 2021, this is sort of the financial district in London. That's Canary Wharf. And I spent almost a good part of 12 years in those 2 buildings in Barclays and HSBC. So 10 years in Barclays, in many different floors in that building, doing many different things. And 2 years in HSBC, where I was a director in their private bank. But essentially, I just gave investment advice to entrepreneurs who were very successful, and in a funny way, they advised me about what entrepreneurship really was. So what I found out from them was entrepreneurship wasn't really just about taking risks. It was following your dreams and passions and ambitions. And I realized that when I went to the UK for university, it was meant to be for 4 years. So I was brought up in Bangladesh, and I spent 4 years in the UK, and I realized that that had turned into 16. So when my son was born in 2018, I decided that it was now or never. Like, if I was going to follow my ambitions to come back to Bangladesh and try and build something worthwhile with social impact, something that I was passionate about, it had to be now. So as any finance guy would do, what I started doing was looking at the numbers. So for those of you who have been in other rooms and have been in the sessions today, you would have found out the most important thing about today's event. Bangladesh is the best kept secret in the world. We do a terrible job marketing ourselves globally. These numbers behind us is the annual GDP growth rate for the last 10 years from the World Bank. We are one of the fastest growing economies in the world. We're growing faster than India, Vietnam, Indonesia, you name it. But importantly, we have a $455 billion GDP. And if you divide that by the number of people, that's $2,600 per person. Compare that with India, $2,700 per person. So we're not too far away. The other statistic that I started looking at, which was very interesting and something that you don't know as, when you're sort of away from the country for 16 years, right? Is that we have a humongous population, 172 million people. Now put that into perspective. That's the 8th most populous country in the world. According to a Boston Consulting Group report, I met somebody from BCG today, so I don't know if they're in the room, but according to that report, by 2030, this is going to be the 9th largest consumer market in the world. And that's because of the 2 things we talked about, the population size and the economic growth rates. But all of these numbers weren't the ones that really drove education home. So the next statistic is the most important one. How many of you in the room know what percentage of that population is below the age of 25? Any guesses?
60.
Oh, okay, that's too much. 50%. 50%. So 85 million people are below the age of 25. What I term as the learning age population, what economists term as the demographic dividend, but essentially, this is the youth. A youth that is increasingly more aspirational, ambitious, and digitally savvy. This is the future of our country, and this is our greatest asset. So I thought, if we were to empower our greatest asset, what better way to do it than with education, and an enhanced education? So when we think about education today, these are the 3 numbers. Of the 85 million, there's 41 million students across primary, secondary, and tertiary. There are 1.2 million teachers in 160,000 schools. But the most important thing that we all know is that education in Bangladesh is broken. It has been for some time. And this isn't a problem. This problem exists because we're trying to solve a problem that you can't solve. Fundamentally, traditional methods cannot solve the issue that we have. On one side, you have this 85 million people, a huge demand. On the other side, the supply side. How do you create enough qualified teachers? How do you get enough infrastructure into classrooms? How do you get quality learning materials? We fundamentally don't have enough resources in our country. The entire education budget is only 1.6% of our GDP. Let's put that into perspective again. The UN says that the minimum budget should be 4 to 6% for an economy that's growing at our pace. So we don't have the resources to solve for this. And because the public purse is so small, there is a shadow education system. It's a private shadow education system of private tutors that are effectively spread across the country. And because they're spread across the country and pricing themselves, they're actually unaffordable to most. So there is an inequality that's being created. And it doesn't stop there. There's a huge issue with access. There's a big rural-urban divide. So the people in urban centers benefit from the economic migration of all the best talent. The best teachers are migrating to the centers, but 2/3 of the student population live in rural Bangladesh. That's 75%. And all of this came to a head in July 2024. The student uprising started with a protest around job quotas. Essentially, this was a symptom of a bigger problem. A problem that the youth were disillusioned, that they didn't have a voice, that they didn't feel like they were being given the opportunity or the access to access those opportunities. And essentially, we still have this problem today. The ILO says 16% is our youth unemployment rate. These are official figures. I'm pretty sure it's more than that. So the question is, how do we solve it?